Between 1871 and 1914, the world experienced what historians call the Second Industrial Revolution, a technological and industrial transformation even more recognizable to us today than the First Industrial Revolution of textiles and steam. The Second Industrial Revolution marked a new phase of industrialization that transformed economies and societies around the world. Unlike the First Industrial Revolution, which was driven by cotton textiles, steam power, and water-powered machinery, this new era focused on the development of steel and iron production, chemical manufacturing, electricity, oil, heavy machinery, and modern transportation technologies such as railroads, automobiles, and airplanes. These innovations greatly increased industrial productivity, improved communication and transportation, and stimulated economic growth on an unprecedented scale. The Second Industrial Revolution laid the foundation for many of the technologies, industries, and systems that continue to shape the modern industrial world today. By the 1870s, the center of industrial activity shifted away from textiles and towards steel production, which became the foundation of modern industrial society. Steel was stronger, more durable, and more versatile than iron, making it essential for a wide range of construction and engineering projects. It was used to build railroads and locomotives, allowing goods and people to travel farther and faster than ever before. Steel also made possible the construction of bridges, skyscrapers, factories, and oil refineries, transforming both city skylines and industrial landscapes. Many of the era's most famous achievements, including the Eiffel Tower in Paris and the internal framework of the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor, relied on steel and advanced metal engineering. As industries expanded and transportation networks grew, the world became heavier, larger, and more interconnected, and it was steel that made this remarkable transformation possible. A major expansion occurred in the chemical industry during the Second Industrial Revolution, leading to innovations that transformed everyday life and modern industry. Scientists and industrial companies developed synthetic dyes, which revolutionized the textile industry by producing brighter, longer-lasting colors at lower costs. Advances in chemistry also led to the creation of artificial fertilizers, which dramatically increased agricultural productivity and helped feed growing populations. New materials such as early plastics opened the door to a wide variety of consumer and industrial products, while improved methods for producing explosives supported mining, construction, and military operations. In addition, chemical research contributed to the development of early pharmaceuticals, improving the treatment of diseases and laying the groundwork for modern medicine. As a result, chemistry became one of the most important scientific and industrial fields, transforming medicine, agriculture, consumer goods, and warfare, and helping to shape the modern world. The two inventions that most dramatically shrank the world during the Second Industrial Revolution were the automobile and the airplane. These technologies revolutionized transportation by allowing people and goods to travel faster and farther than ever before. Their development also created entirely new industries and economic opportunities. The rise of automobiles fueled the growth of gasoline refineries, rubber and tire manufacturing, paved roads and highways, and automobile repair and service businesses. At the same time, the invention of the airplane led to the emergence of the aircraft manufacturing industry and opened the possibility of rapid long-distance travel through the air. Although steam engines still provided most industrial power by 1914, the internal combustion engine was advancing rapidly and becoming increasingly important. Its efficiency and versatility soon made it the dominant source of power for transportation, helping to shape the modern world and transforming the way people lived, worked, and connected with one another. The First Industrial Revolution had been dominated by Britain, which pioneered factory production, steam power, and modern manufacturing. However, after the unification of Germany in 1871, the balance of industrial power began to shift dramatically. Advances in steel production, science, engineering, and industrial organization allowed both Germany and the United States to challenge Britain's long-standing economic leadership. The change can be clearly seen in steel production statistics. In 1870, Britain produced approximately 43% of the world's steel, compared to 25% for Germany and only 8% for the United States. By 1900, Britain's share had fallen to 18%, while Germany produced 23% and the United States had surged to 37%. By 1914, Britain's share had declined even further to 10%, Germany maintained about 23%, and the United States had risen to an impressive 42% of global steel production. These figures reflected a profound transformation in the global economy. By the eve of World War I, Germany had overtaken Britain as the leading industrial power in Europe, driven by its advanced steel, chemical, and engineering industries. At the same time, the United States had become the largest industrial nation in the world, producing nearly half of the world's steel and leading in many sectors of modern manufacturing. As a result, the industrial map of the world was completely redrawn, with economic power shifting away from Britain and toward the rapidly growing industrial giants of Germany and the United States. As the Second Industrial Revolution transformed economies and accelerated industrial growth, it also dramatically changed the lives of workers. Millions of people left rural areas and moved to rapidly growing cities in search of employment in factories, mines, and industrial plants. While industrialization created new job opportunities, working conditions were often harsh. Industrial laborers commonly endured long working hours, sometimes lasting 10 to 12 hours a day or more, for low wages that barely provided a living income. Factories were frequently overcrowded and dangerous, exposing workers to poor safety conditions, industrial accidents, and unhealthy environments. Workers also faced intense competition from women and children who were often employed because employers could pay them lower wages. These difficult conditions led many workers to organize labor unions and demand reforms, including shorter hours, higher pay, safer workplaces, and greater legal protections. As a result, the struggles of industrial workers became a major social and political issue in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. As the hardships of industrial life became more apparent, working people were forced to choose between two main strategies for improving their conditions. The first approach was to negotiate directly with employers through the creation of trade unions. By organizing collectively, workers hoped to gain greater bargaining power and secure higher wages, shorter working hours, safer working conditions, and better treatment on the job. Through strikes, collective bargaining, and labor organization, trade unions sought to make the best possible deal within the existing capitalist system. The second approach was political rather than economic. Many workers concluded that meaningful change could only come through government action, leading them to support socialist and Marxist political parties. These parties argued that governments should regulate industry, protect workers, and address the inequalities created by industrial capitalism. Some socialists favored gradual reforms through democratic elections, while Marxists believed that capitalism would eventually be replaced by a system based on collective ownership and greater economic equality. Together, trade unions and socialist movements became two of the most important responses to the social challenges created by the Second Industrial Revolution. Let us now examine each of these approaches in greater detail. Trade unions emerged as one of the most important responses to the challenges of industrialization. Rather than seeking to overturn the economic system, union members aimed to improve wages, working conditions, and job security through collective action and negotiation with employers. The earliest and strongest labor unions developed in Britain, where industrialization had begun, and the movement later spread to the United States and other industrial nations. One of the first major working-class movements in Britain was the Chartist movement, which reached its peak in 1842. The Chartists sought political reforms that would give working people a greater voice in government. Their goals included expanding voting rights, making elections more democratic, and allowing working-class men to serve in Parliament. Although the movement attracted widespread support, it failed to achieve many of its immediate objectives and suffered a series of political setbacks during the 1840s. After the decline of Chartism, many British workers concluded that economic organisation offered a more practical path to improvement than political protest alone. As a result, they increasingly turned to trade unions, which focused on negotiating directly with employers for better pay, shorter working hours, and safer working conditions. Over time, unions became a powerful force in British society and served as a model for labour movements in the United States and throughout the industrial world. By the 1850s and 1870s, British workers increasingly organised themselves into craft unions, which were associations made up of skilled workers who practiced the same trade. These unions represented occupations such as carpenters, weavers, plumbers, and printers, whose members possessed specialized skills that gave them greater bargaining power in the labor market. Unlike earlier working-class movements that focused heavily on political reform, craft unions generally avoided politics and concentrated on improving wages, hours, and working conditions through practical means. They emphasized negotiation and collective bargaining with employers, often discouraging strikes unless they were absolutely necessary. To support their members during periods of unemployment, illness, or labor disputes, craft unions also developed strong memberships and substantial financial reserves. Their disciplined approach helped them gain respect and influence, and they remained a powerful force in British labor relations well into the late 20th century. Beginning in the 1880s, a new form of labor organization known as the Industrial Union emerged. Unlike craft unions, which represented only skilled workers in a specific trade, industrial unions sought to unite all workers within a particular industry, regardless of their skill level, job title, or specific duties. This approach reflected the changing nature of industrial production, where large factories increasingly relied on both skilled and unskilled labor working together. Industrial unions believed that workers would have greater bargaining power if they organized as a single group rather than as separate trades. A well-known example from the United States is the United Auto Workers, UAW, which represented employees throughout the automobile industry, including assembly line workers, mechanics, and other laborers. By bringing all workers in an industry into one organization, industrial unions were better equipped to negotiate with large corporations and address the challenges created by mass production industries. Alongside craft unions and industrial unions, workers also created organizations specifically for unskilled laborers who made up a large portion of the industrial workforce. These common laborers often performed physically demanding jobs that required little formal training and were therefore among the most vulnerable workers in the industrial economy. Because employers could easily replace them, unskilled workers typically received lower wages, worked longer hours, and faced some of the most dangerous and unhealthy working conditions in factories, mines, docks, and construction sites. To improve their situation, they increasingly turned to collective action and labor organization. Through unions, these workers sought to secure higher wages, shorter working hours, and safer working environments. Although organizing unskilled laborers was often more difficult than organizing skilled workers, these unions played an important role in expanding the labor movement and ensuring that the benefits of industrial progress were shared more broadly among working people.